Hey folks, I'm Papa Boris, and today we're going to review the first of the 3-player games to finish from the 2025 Through the Ages Stage 4 World Championship. I was very nervous going into this game because Whatever Parsley and Rove Random are the two highest rated players in the group, and they're both significantly higher rated than me, with a lot of tournament games played. So even though Whatever Parsley won both games and Rove Random had a bad day in the 4Ps and lost both 4-player games, I was still pretty nervous to go up against these two. Now, my first decision of the game was actually simple, yet quite interesting. Do you take Roman Roads here, or do you take the Engineering Genius? The thing is, if you take the Engineering Genius, and Rove Random does not take the Colossus, then the Colossus does come down your way, and then you can take the Colossus and have Engineering Genius to go with it, which is a really strong start. But if Rove Random does decide to be frisky and take the Colossus, then what's going to happen is that the wonders coming out are kind of underwhelming. There's no library, there's no pyramids. The 3 wonders are Hanging Gardens, Acropolis, Colosseum, of which really only the Acropolis I want to have. So I decided to follow my time-tested philosophy of don't dick around. Let's just take the good wonder that is right there in front of us. It is a good wonder, and let Whatever Parsley have the Engineering Genius. Now, there's a chance, of course, he would take Hippocrates. I would consider taking Hippocrates, a second player here, but he decides to grab the Engineering Genius and Rich Land, just taking 3 rocks with his draft, which is totally fine. And then Rove Random, I was very curious, would he take the Colossus? And the answer is no. He grabs Hippocrates and a rock, so that means that Parsley is going to get the Colossus to go with his Engineering Genius, and that was the risk of letting the second player have the Engineering Genius. So, of course, the player who won both 4-player games is off to a roaring start. But at least he doesn't have a leader. So he's going to have to take the Colossus and a leader and, make some sacrifices that way. Okay, so I have a very normal first turn. I build a mine, raise population, grab urban growth, and stockpile. Okay, actually, sorry, that's not a normal turn. Normal would have been if I had spent my other actions taking and playing the leader that's here. But I have seen in Weidenbaum's games some top players make choices like this where they're like, nah, I don't like this leader. I prefer to wait for another leader. So, if the best players in the world can do it, I'm going to do it too. I don't like Ashoka. Hammurabi's right here. If someone takes Hammurabi, Confucius is right here. Now, one of my opponents has taken Hippocrates, so only one of these leaders can get taken. I'm going to just wait for a good leader. Urban growth is good. Stockpile is maybe a mistake. Maybe I should have taken frugality for a free food, but I decide to spend the extra action to get the extra rock, which is a little bit of a questionable decision, and we pass the turn. So Parsley now living the dream here. He gets to take Hammurabi for 2 actions, but it ends up being a really clean turn. He plays Hammurabi, makes a mine, raises population, and of course, I beg your pardon. Hold on, right, never mind. I forgot how this went. Okay, he doesn't take the Colossus, which I think is a little bit strange because Colossus Engineering Genius is so good. However, as we'll see, the reason for this, I think, is because the Forbidden City came out. It's the 3rd card in the deck, and he wanted to build this instead. So I think this was deliberate, passing on the Colossus because the Forbidden City was here. So he gets to use up all 5 of his actions with Hammurabi, doing normal things, playing a leader, building a mine, raising population, doesn't have to take any janky yellow cards, and then he's looking forward to building this strong wonder as his first wonder. Keep in mind that when you do go for this, you are very vulnerable to Ravages of Time. So if either of your opponent draws that card, they're probably going to play it, and that is a risk that you undertake when you go with this line. But that means that in the short term, at least, there's no Colossus Engineering Genius, which I was happy about. Rove plays Hippocrates, chooses to go for the Colosseum. Personally, I would have chosen the Acropolis, but Colosseum, it's just a personal preference. Some people do like that wonder. And then we have a mine and a raising population, all totally normal. And now I'm very, very happy because on my turn, I get to take Confucius, which is one of my favorite leaders, and I think widely regarded as a very, very strong leader because he gives you extra science for a relatively low condition. You do have to get the event deck cranking, but you can also put in junk like Kidnap, so that, reduces at least somewhat the consequences of having to play events, because at least you're not always forced to play events that could be devastating for you. After playing him, what do? Well, let's get the lab built, and hey, look at this. We have a bit of doldrums. I could take Columbus. If one of these 2 draws had been like a really good colony, probably one of the ones that gives 2 or more yellow tokens, then maybe I would have taken Columbus here, but as it is, we get to play the stockpile and stay out of consumption. All right, so now Parsley continues on with his strategy, grabbing the Forbidden City, building a lab, and taking iron. He has 1 action left, and he chooses to grab warfare. Personally, I wouldn't have done that. Whatever, the Forbidden City first stage costs 1 rock, and whatever has 1 rock. So he could have just gotten started on this wonder. On the other hand, he is Hammurabi. He does have an extra action already, so maybe taking this as a kind of reserve in case, you desperately need it for an extra military action. If you get stuck with Republic or something, that makes sense. But as he's only making 2 science per turn, and as he's going to definitely almost use those first 5 science to make iron, this is going to be a long time coming, so I would have preferred just to get started on the wonder myself. Alright, it's Rove. Rove's got a bit of a tough turn here. There's nothing super great for him to take. He does get a bit of a lucky break here. The religion event pops up, and if you'll notice, I don't have a worker, and Parsley doesn't have a worker. So Rove is the only one who gets the free temple out of it, which is sick. So he gets the free temple, then raises population, builds a lab, and then spends his last 2 actions taking knights. And as you know, I'm not a huge fan of this. I would have preferred either the breakthrough or the irrigation, and admittedly a bit of a questionable card after that. But totally reasonable. I know people like to have the military and be safe, so he grabs it. Completely nothing wrong with that, and we pass the turn. On my turn, I put the kidnap into the deck to get a science, and we get the development of markets, which is actually bad for me. If you look at the situation right now, if I were to spend 4 actions building the Roman roads, then it would cost me 5 rocks, and I would get a blue token. But even without the blue token, I'd be out of corruption by, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a blue token. So I'd have 2 tokens here. As it is, however, when I'm forced to take 2 more blue tokens thanks to development of markets, if I build the Roman roads, I will be exactly 1 blue token short of not being corrupt. So I decided to delay the Roman roads. Now you could say, hang on a minute, Boris. If you build the Roman roads, you get an extra rock. So you're really only sacrificing 1 rock to build them, not the full 2 from corruption. And that's true. Maybe I should have just built the Roman roads here. But I'd take a kind of weird turn here. I decided to get out of corruption by raising population twice. And then I'm going to build a warrior, which is obviously not great because if the warrior event is here, then it's just a total waste of rocks. But I decided to do that to get out of corruption. I also take the masonry, which is dubious. It is a good card, of course, but there is a breakthrough here as well. And we saw what happened in one of the 4-player games with masonry. I also make a huge mistake here, actually. This is basically a blunder. For my last civil action, I obviously should just take the breakthrough with the masonry, and then I get 2 free signs. But instead, I build the Roman roads. Now, next turn, I'm going to research masonry and build the Roman roads for 2 actions. If I had not built this stage, I would have still been able to build the Roman roads for 2 actions. So I'm literally, and I mean literally, throwing away an action. That action specifically would have probably been to take breakthrough. If you're a little bit conservative, you could take the irrigation to make sure you have a food plan. But I just threw away 2 science this game, so that was a bit of a sad thing to do early in the game against 2 extremely strong players. So there it is, me building a warrior to get out of corruption, and I pass a rather tragic turn. Alright, so Parsley's up, gets going on this wonder. In fact, with the engineering genius, he can build it, which he does. So this is a really early Forbidden City. So kudos to him for pretty solid early game play here. He still has 2 actions left, and he decides for those to grab the reserves and this breakthrough that I left for him for absolutely no reason. So yes, good job, Boris, giving the highest rated player in the group and the person who won both 4-player games a free breakthrough in the 1 action slot. That is how you through the ages, my friend. All right, now we see Rove not playing event, raises population, grabs Eleanor, which is, okay, maybe not the most exciting leader in Age 1, because you do have extra actions here and extra rocks here, and extra defense and culture here. However, Hippocrates, you want to replace him, and I think I would do the exact same thing as Rove here. You've got the 2 things, you have a decent leader here, there's no other leaders coming, take them so you don't have Hippocrates sitting around doing nothing for the rest of the age. Now what to do with the last couple of actions, he decides to grab the Code of Laws, which makes sense. He's going to have 6 science next turn. If no one's putting pressure and he's not forced to build the knights, research the knights, might as well spend the science getting an extra action. So very reasonable play here in my opinion, and we pass the turn. On my turn, I was very sad Monarchy was not in the 1 action slot. I play an event. I actually play the immigration in here, so that'll factor into some decisions I make later on. And I research masonry, spend 2 actions, making the Roman roads. So I would have spent 2 actions even if I had not built a stage last turn. And for my last action, I would have loved to get this monarchy, but it's not here. So what I decided to do is grab the bread and circus because Pierre is in the game and is very, 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 very strong. So having the bread and circus is worthwhile, and I just put immigration in there. So I actually am strategically looking to research this and build one pretty soon, and with 2 happy faces, hopefully win that immigration and get a free worker. Parsley has the Forbidden City, so he's not going to be making happy faces anytime soon because he doesn't need them. So my only competition for the immigration event is Rove, who admittedly does have a wonder that's giving him a happy face. But with the temple and this, he does not need any more happy faces. So as long as I get a bread and circus built, we both get a population. I keep the open borders agreement and a defense card, and it's really annoying because the open borders agreement is so strong, but you don't really want to use your political action to offer it as Confucius, because then you're missing out on your science. Of course, it may still be the correct thing to do because it's just that strong. But in this case, I don't want to give a military action to Parsley, and Rove is an extra military action coming with the Colosseum. Now, I benefit more because I would go from 2 to 3 than him going from 3 to 4, but there is a slight chance he actually just rejects the pact, which would be very, very, very sad. So maybe what you should do in this case is wait until you replace Confucius and then offer this with your new leader. But I wasn't thinking about that until after this game that I was reviewing it and saw that that was a possibility. So anyway, I didn't play it. I did something else to play an event, and we're over to Parsley. So Parsley has a whopping 6 actions to work with here. Raises population, gets going with the iron mines, upgrades 1, still has 3 actions left. And he decides to grab the monarchy, which is good with Hammurabi. You can sometimes do a revolution and spend another action with Hammurabi to do something, and undertake the Great Wall. Personally, I would have picked the castle, although I know that high-rated players don't hold this wonder in super high esteem. But I really like the extra culture on this one and the long-term survivability that you get from this wonder. And if you have, 2 or fewer swords and or cannons, then it's giving you the same strength as the Great Wall. Of course, eventually you're going to have probably more than 2 warriors and cannons, but until that happens, this is giving a comparable bonus with more culture and some long-term significance. In any case, though, it's completely reasonable. I understand Great Wall is arguably the stronger wonder. Something to note is you could also take the cultural heritage. 2 science is very strong. You're on very low science here. And your Hammurabi with the Forbidden City, so you have 6 actions a turn. That's the perfect time to spend the 2 actions to get 2 science. For your last action, heck, raise a population or just play these reserves. There's other things you could do. So you don't have to take the Great Wall here, but I also think it's not unreasonable to do so. All right, so Rove is up. What's Rove going to do? Well, plays an event, because Eleanor's always going to play events. We have a lot of event playing here. Confucius always plays events. She plays events. If Parsley takes Nostradamus, he's going to play events. We just have a lot of stuff coming in here. So when that happens, it's worth noting that some marginal events are likely to be in the deck. Some nasty stuff like the rats, the Dark Ages, the pestilence. You should not put on a Detective Pikachu face. If you see those events popping out, you should expect it in advance and play around it a little bit more than usual when multiple players of a game are chucking tons of events in there. All right, Rove random has time. But since this is a bit of a dry board here, he decides to just finish his Colossus from scratch, and then he can research the knights and make a knight thanks to the extra rocks from the event deck. So he gets strong. Maybe he put some strength-based events in there. Obviously, he could have done Code of Laws. So he's delaying getting an extra action to make the knights. And that's not necessarily a mistake. It may be that he put some strength-based events in there and wants to profit from them. So here we go. Got the medieval army sitting pretty at 5 strength. And it's not a huge worry for anyone else because for me, I do have a defense card, and Parsley has Nostradamus landing in his lap. So everyone's going to be safe, but I'm pretty sure that Rove Random had his eye on some strength-based Age 1 events, and with him drawing extra cards and putting events in every turn, and me putting in events every turn as Confucius, those strength events, you can count on them to pop off pretty fast. Well, I do play an event in there. I play my junky card. We get some free stuff. And what to do with my turn? A bit of a dry board happening here. Well, this is then the perfect time to research the bread and circuses and build one so that the immigration, which is in the deck that just flipped over, will actually give me an extra free population. Now, what to do with my last 2 actions? Well, I actually here could take Nostradamus because Rove is a little bit threatening. And there may be strength-based events in here. And maybe that's what I should have done. But what I decided to do was wait for Isabella for the extra rock, because the 4 rock production here is temporary. That's only because of Roman roads. This will switch to science in H2. So I thought, okay, if this switches to science and then I have the rock from Isabella, that'll be good for me. I think, though, I made a mistake. I don't have a great way to spend my actions here, and taking Nostradamus would have been nice. But instead, what I decided to do is to raise population and make a warrior, which is not great to have 3 warriors without the Legion tactic or even a fighting band, but it's just avoiding corruption. And I just take a rich land. So I'm gambling. I'm in the future going to get iron or irrigation or something, or an H2 production technology. And instead of taking Nostradamus to be safe for the events, I grabbed this speculative 2 rocks. And also, Parsley would have been, in a little bit of trouble here. He could, of course, play the reserves, go up to 9 rocks, and then build the Great Wall. He'll still even have an extra action after that to do something else with, so that'll take him to 2 strength. So he'll be maybe safe from aggressions if one of these is a defense card. But with Nostradamus for him, it's just so strong, it completely makes him cozy safe. And then with a little bit of strength boost, he can even start being not the weakest player. So I really probably should have just taken Nostradamus, especially since Confucius, at the very least, let me keep this cultural influence, and maybe I could have kept more events to play and played other things into the deck. Then I could have saved up some events for Nostradamus. Alright, so Parsley must be really happy with this bozo sitting in front of him who apparently doesn't know how to play through the ages. We obviously see him take Nostradamus and play him. Now he's got just the actual 5 actions with his Forbidden City. What to do next? He could build the Great Wall, but he decides to raise population, get his production up first, grab a breakthrough for 1 action, because that's obviously very good. He makes a warrior as well to be not the weakest, even off of tie breaks. He raises population again, so he's using up all his resources, and for his last action, he grabs an urban growth. It's a bit speculative, and it does fill up his whole hand. On the other hand, next turn, he is going to be able to break through monarchy, so it's not a huge deal that his hand is full at the moment. And he can still play reserves and build the Great Wall next turn if he wishes. So, pretty decent turn here for Parsley, and we pass. So now Robe is up, plays an event, and it is free science. So nothing bad happening yet. We get the Code of Laws drop, that's all of his science. He takes Alchemy to fix his science in the future, raises population, builds another Knight to continue being definitely the strongest and definitely not the weakest, and he grabs the reserves for his final action. So no swords here, interestingly. I like taking swords here, even though you already have taken Knights, because you do have the discount with the Colosseum. And this opens you up to potentially getting a classic army going with just Age 1 military attacks, and not having to take any Age 2 military attacks is a real load off. But at the same time, I understand you're low on rocks. You have an extra action from Code. You can maybe play reserves more easily. Also totally reasonable. Well, I get what I wished for. I have Isabella here. I play an event, and it's the Uncertain Borders! I put Open Borders Agreement in there, which maybe doesn't maybe I was trying to save it. I obviously don't want to play Foray, because I'm not going to be one of the strongest, and I don't want to play my defense cards, so maybe I just felt like I had to play something to get Confucius' Science. But here we go, I lose a yellow token from my bank. It won't be the last time it happens this game. Then I take the iron, research it, and before I upgrade a mine, I gotta take Isabella and play her. This is gonna be my last turn in Age 1. And with upgrading a mine and having Isabella's 2 blue tokens, I am just able to get out of corruption. One thing to note, though, is there is an alchemy here. And I could have taken alchemy, researched it, and upgraded an alchemy. With the masonry already giving me some rocks, and my leader giving me some rocks, and my wonder having given me a lot of rocks, you might say, hey, Papa Boars, wouldn't it have made some sense to go for science instead of rocks? Because that's what you need more. The issue is that because of masonry, alchemy only costs 2 rocks to upgrade, which means I would be corrupt. But I think that still would have been better than going after iron, just because science is so much more important. On the other hand, we are going to get science from Roman roads, so I'm not like completely bereft of science, but I do think it was maybe worth a little more consideration to wait for coal and make sure my science is really good in Age 2. But I pass on the alchemy, so Parsley's up, gets the monarchy down, now has a ridiculous 6 actions for realsies, takes the alchemy that I left for him because he's just always picking up the amazing stuff I don't do because, I'm just cool like that. He builds 3 stages of the Great Wall. He's 1 action short of playing reserves and building the last stage, but that's fine. He just grabs the frugality here for 2 free food and calls it a day. Now he can use reserves for food with frugality to get some workers, or to get at least the next worker out of the bank. All right, we go into H2. Well, let's have Rove take his turn and then take a look at the overview of this age. So Rove plays an event, of course. It's Dark Ages, so I lose a couple of science. Honestly, though, as weird as this is, I would say this is incredibly lucky. I'm really glad that Dark Ages came out now. If this had come out in like the next event deck, I would have been in some serious trouble. The fact that this thing is out of the way means that now it's safe to stockpile science, and that can actually be worth a little bit of science that you lose when the event comes out early. So Rove grabs Engineering Genius, plays reserves for food, raises population, and then takes the Warfare, which he seems to like, because he did that in the 4-player games as well. He had a tough turn here. He has no science to research alchemy with, and there's a bunch of leaders there he can't take, and I can see why he wouldn't want to commit to Machu Picchu. This particular wonder is not the greatest for him here, because he passed on both Age 1 technologies, and of course maybe you could take irrigation later, but I mean it's just a weird line, very committal. So I think he made the most of a kind of tricky situation with his position, and passes the turn. Alright, I don't play any events. I take the Code of Laws and I research it. Thanks to Confucius' science, I'm able to do this. And I now have 5 actions. Let me pause for a second here, take a look at the overview here. Rove is running away with the culture. His stealthy generation from Eleanor is really kicking in. We all kind of suck at science. We're doing okay on rocks except for Rove, and none of us upgraded our food. So it's, anyone's game. We all have roughly about the same amount of actions. I am the worst on actions, both on military and on civil, but it isn't the end of the world, and, anyone can still take this one. So, what do I do here after getting the Code of Laws? Well, at this point, I decide it's time to get my mines upgraded. I upgrade both of them thanks to Isabella's blue tokens. I'm just barely not corrupt. I didn't use the rich land, though. If I had used that, I would be corrupt. So that was unfortunate. But on the plus side, I'm probably going to be getting a selective breeding. There are 2 copies of it in the deck, and then I can use it for that. So admittedly, this was not the greatest card grab, and this kind of shows why sometimes grabbing a thing like Rich Land isn't the surefire 2-rock bet that you think it's going to be. With a pretty dry board, I'm glad that I have the opportunity to use my actions productively at least. So we play the Fighting Band down, and we pass the turn. Alright, Parsley's up, plays an event, gets 3 points with Nostradamus, and it's the immigration I put in, so Rove and I get a free worker, just as planned. It's time to take the rifles, which makes a lot of sense. You want that for your warriors to have an opportunity to increase your strength by 4. He finishes the Great Wall, makes another warrior for 2 more strength, and then also gets the alchemy down. He has an urban growth, so he can actually just get that upgrade in there, which is very, very unfortunate for me to see. And then he grabs rich land to finish upgrading his last mine with. So whatever, making it look easy to use 6 actions in a totally productive way. So Rove is up, still strongest, still Eleanor, still playing events. We get some more science. And what's it time to do? Well, he researches the alchemy and upgrades a lab, grabs irrigation to be safe, and a rich land to upgrade it with, and then upgrades his other lab. So he still passes on the swordsman, which makes sense. We are in H2, but something to consider is that there's only 1 copy of rifleman now because whatever just got 1 of them. And, a good option now might be better than the best option later. If, with all of your Eleanor draws, you do get the 1 copy of Classic Army, which granted is a little bit of a stretch. There's a lot of cards in the deck and only 1 Classic Army, but still, you are at an increased chance of doing that compared to someone who doesn't have 3 military actions and doesn't get an extra 2 draws every turn. Then you're going to really wish you had those swordsmen, so I personally would have taken that there instead of this rich land. On the other hand, he does have crap production and is going to need to upgrade that, and when he does, the rich land will be helpful. So, different play styles here for sure. Alright, now I'm the weakest, regardless of Nostradamus. Do I play an event? I do not. I decided to go a little bit bonkers this turn. I was feeling a little bit of pressure now. Now I'm not making any culture, and, I do have a lot of rocks, but I have so many resources, I want to just use them for something. So I decide to take the Kremlin. I would have preferred the Transcontinental Railroad, but even with Masonry, I am tragically 1 action short of being able to take it and build it. So I take the Kremlin, which I can take and build in the same turn, and I get an extra action back and 2 culture. And I thought, you know what, this is the day for Kremlin. Now on generation at least, it's a band-aid, because Parsley's getting 3 with Nostradamus, and Rove's getting tons by discarding cards from Eleanor, so it's still not great, but at least I'm getting 2 culture per turn. And I was actually hoping I would also get to build the Transcontinental Railroad. For my last action here, the free one from Kremlin, I grabbed the Engineering Genius, so I'm looking to build the Transcontinental Railroad next. All that needs to happen is for Parsley to not take the Transcontinental Railroad. He plays an event. It's Raiders, so Rove and I lose 2 resources, probably 2 food. And then, after taking Cannon, he takes the Transcontinental Railroad. So I was very, very sad about this. But it's not a wrong play, I don't think, because he is safe with Nostradamus. There's no military danger. And he has the reserves here that he never did end up using for the Great Wall. So with 10 rocks, he could play reserves and build this whole thing next turn. No sweat. He also uses a rich land to upgrade a mine. Notice it doesn't change the math. He paid a rock, and then he gets an extra rock. So he's still at 10 plus 2 is 12, and he can build the Continental Railroad next time. So I was very, 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 very sad to see that. But I'm not being salty about it. That, I think, makes sense for him. In general, with the H2 Wonders, my philosophy is don't take him unless you can build him quickly. He can build it quickly. It's good wonder here. Very early. Sets him up for the oil railroad combo that he used to devastating effect in the 4-player game. So I think it just makes perfect sense for him to do this. Honestly, it probably says something about me as an individual that I was actually hoping that the Transcontinental Railroad would survive to my turn. Now, the new deposits pops out, which is actually really good because I make the most, and at least this happened before Parsley got an extra couple from the railroad being built. So Rove decides not to wait for selective breeding, pops down the irrigation, gets a farm going, gets the other farm going, so now he's the only one with somewhat-ish fixed food. He then grabs a efficient upgrade for the coal that's coming down the way. Now, he is 1 science short of this. However, maybe he was hoping that one of the more Confucius event would pop out, and then he would be at exactly 7 science and could research the coal and start getting those upgrades going. All right, so up next, it's me. I decided to have another frisky turn here. I play an event. It's knowledge, so there is Rove's science that he needed to get the coal going. And while there are some things that would be nice for me to have, like a constitutional monarchy, for example, and that probably is the right thing to do, I decide to put the Suez Canal under construction and build it. So it's a 1-colony Suez Canal here. I get the developed territory for 2 yellow tokens. But I decided, you know what? That 5 science is sick. Dark Ages is out. There's no danger hoarding science. There's a republic in case someone takes a constitutional monarchy, and I can fix my actions. Obviously, with the Kremlin and the Code of Laws already being at 6 actions, I would prefer the constitutional monarchy over the republic pretty substantially, but at least the republic's giving me, the Kremlin's also giving me a military action, so it's not the end of the world if I have the republic, and I will have tons of actions, and maybe I can just action my way out of this slightly less than appetizing game that I'm playing at the moment. At least I'm lucky that neither of my opponents went like super big on strength. Because if it was one of those games where someone goes up to like 15 strength right away with Jan Shishka or something stupid, then I would have actually been in some pretty serious ass trouble. I just have no way of raising my military here, so I'm really only able to make these crazy wonder building plays because there's no military pressure from my opponents. All right, we have an event. It is a Confucius event, so Rove was going to get his coal. He partially builds the railroad, which makes perfect sense. There's absolutely no reason not to. He even has 2 actions left over. And with those, he decides to upgrade his last lab, finish fixing up his science, and grab navigation, suggesting he might have some colonies in there, which I was very sad to see because, of course, I think I put some colonies in there, and I'd like to win more colonies because I have the Suez Canal. But now we have a weird move. He plays a Napoleonic army, so it's a bit telegraphy. I can see maybe if he was trying to keep all the cards in hand, he would want to just get this out to not have to throw away something good. So perfectly sensible, but it does mean that now we know that cavalrymen is really valuable to him. When you make a move like this, the thing to consider is not just, can opponents copy the tactic? That's the way I used to think about it. Like, oh, well, there's no way anyone's going to have, like, rifles, horses, and cannons and upgrade my tactics. So it's safe to put out, and steal my tactics. So it's safe to put out there. But it's also, like, what information does this give to your opponents about you and how you prioritize cards? Now somebody may take an aggressive cavalryman where they wouldn't have otherwise. Now, I'm not saying it was wrong. Maybe he just needed to do it to keep all his cards. And he passes the turn. All right, Rove is up, plays an event. We have prosperity, so everybody gets a trickle of food. There's the coal for Rove. So he finally gets to fix his rocks. Whoop, and with 2 actions left over, grabs the constitutional monarchy. Makes perfect sense, although it does mean he's not taking the final copy of Rifleman. That's the last one. And with the Colosseum, seems like that would be pretty good. Now, do you pass on constitutional monarchy for that? It's a tough one. I maybe would have done the same thing, but it's it's one of those things where if you had one more action, I'm pretty sure he would take the Rifleman here. The thing is that with Kanmon and both republics here, if you take the Rifleman, there's a really good chance that all 3 of these cards are going to fall off or get taken, and now you're stuck waiting for the last copy of the constitutional monarchy to upgrade your government. So, that's an argument in favor of taking this. On the other hand, you're in very low science. So maybe, you're not going to get to play this for a while anyway. Maybe you should just take the rifleman and let it be and just deal with 5 actions for a while. It's a tough one. He plays the hussars, makes another knight, still has 6 rocks to upgrade a coal mine next turn if desired, and he passes the turn. Now I'm getting a little bit nervous about the strength differential here, and I offer the scientific cooperation to Parsley. Now, why would I offer the scientific cooperation to the character, these characters, to the opponent who won both 4-player games, especially since Rove Random has the same science production? Well, the thing is, I wanted to offer it to Rove Random, but the problem is that I have all this science saved up, and there's republics here. So I was actually kind of sad that Rove did take the constitutional monarchy because that stopped me from having it. So clearly, if you're a smart opponent and someone with 19 science offers you the scientific cooperation, then you know that they're just going to start by taking the republic, blasting it down, and they still got 10 science left over to do other stuff with. So when you're doing scientific cooperation, you have to look at how much science each person has saved up, not just how much science do they generate. I had to offer it to Parsley because we have approximately the same amount of science saved up. Now you might say, well, Papa Boris, hold on a minute. Why not just research Republic this turn, use up that science, and then offer it to Rove next turn? That's fair. But then I'm missing value. And I decided that the negative value of offering it to the stronger opponent was less than the positive value of getting it online sooner. So I offered it to Parsley with a dread in my heart. And then, okay, it's time to get a dillion actions. I take the Republic, I research it. With this, Code of Laws, and Kremlin, I have 9 civil actions. I'm really hoping that'll count for something. At that point, I take the scientific method because I do need to fix my science. In fact, I can research it right now and upgrade both labs thanks to masonry and a giant cache of rocks. What to do with the final 3 actions? Well, I gotta take the rifleman, obviously, because I need to upgrade my strength. In fact, I research it right now, and then I upgrade a rifleman. And then what to do? I take the opera because, you know me, I like to have ways to turn rocks into points. Now, what was the trade-off on this turn? I did not take the selective breeding, and that's certainly a thing. But the thing is, Rove has already got irrigation upgraded all the way, and Parsley will take the selective breeding. And the deck is almost over. So I figured, you know what, I'll probably get a selective breeding. There's another copy in the deck still, so I don't need it now. And I can just wait for it. Now, you might say, well, hang on a minute. It's not just about will you get a copy. If you took it this turn, you could research it and upgrade both of them next turn and fix your food issues. And maybe that would have been worth it. Maybe that would have been worth, say, not taking Opera and not upgrading a lab. So I missed the chance to turn rocks into points, and I miss out on 2 science. But in exchange, I get to have the selective breeding. I think that may have been a more precise turn, especially since... missing out on 2 science, like, yes, that's unfortunate, but missing out on however much food I'm not going to get from getting to have the selective breeding online next turn, that could be a lot more. All right, so I passed the turn here. With that 1 rifleman upgraded, I'm now safe from any aggressions, and no one really has enough, military actions to do wars, I hoped. So we play an event. My labs got upgraded just in time, so to be fair, I would have lost 4 science, not just 2 science, from not upgrading that lab, but I do get a big pile of science back. Parsley gets the navigation down, which I was very sad about. He takes the selective breeding, obviously researches it, and upgrades a farm. Also grabs the architecture, very strong technology, and upgrades the other farm. So he's just picking up the stuff I'm leaving for him because I'm a Dumbo. And he's just going to ride my incompetence coattails to victory. Now, one thing I should note is, if you noticed, whatever Parsley played an event here, but there have been some turns. Okay, never mind. He played an event there either. God, am I just hallucinating? Oh, he played okay, never mind. Just, forget it. I should just click this button until the turns pass and not say words while doing these videos. Okay, so he makes a warrior, which I think was to avoid corruption, maybe? But yeah, obviously he doesn't want 4 warriors here with rifleman cannon and wanting to make a Napoleonic army, but he probably put some colonies in there because he got this navigation, or he just hopes that we did because we were just playing tons of events in general, so he's hoping that he can trade these warriors off back into his bank, pull them out with the selective breeding, and then build them into better units. Okay, so Rove is up, and what's Rove gonna do? Play an event? It is the historic territory, and Parsley goes nuts getting this. And you might see, like, well, hold on a minute. Why would you do that? You don't even need happy faces because you got the Forbidden City. And, like, is this a colony that you want to pay that much for? I think that Parsley did this not just because of the culture of the happy faces, but because he really wanted to get rid of these warriors. He doesn't want 4 warriors when he's doing Napoleonic army. So I think that was mostly what this was about. He does pay 3 of them, which is kind of a lot. But again, I don't think it's actually that crazy. Okay, I think it is kind of crazy. But I think there may be some sense to it because he just wants these warriors to not be warriors eventually. All right, now, Rove makes a strange play, in my opinion, taking Catherine. It is, of course, appealing to get 2 culture per turn in a military action and the opportunity to steal yellow token. But there is Robespierre right here with Constitutional Monarchy, saving you 6 science, which is a totally non-trivial amount of science. And the military action is nice as well. You could also take Darwin for 2 culture per turn. Granted, you do lose a happy face. But I don't know. For me, again, this is a player who's higher rated than me. So I'm not saying this is a mistake. But if you have thoughts in the comments, I'd appreciate it. I couldn't figure out what the reason was to spend 2 extra actions to grab Catherine here when you're very, very low on actions for this stage of the game. For my money personally, getting an extra yellow token and stealing one from an opponent or 2 isn't worth the extra science you could get from Robespierre, especially because we're near the end of H2, and so you're likely to be able to switch to an H3 leader. Well, you're not likely to, but you're near the end of H2, so you may be able to switch to an H3 leader relatively quickly after getting Robespierre. But in any case, he does grab the 2 culture. He upgrades a coal mine. He's got 3 actions left. What to do? He decides to take the cannon, which makes sense. I obviously would like some cannon. That was the second copy of cannon, so he's making it harder for me to catch up militarily, and he's also making sure that he can get going with the right tactics. And I think, as we'll see later, there was a particular reason why he really wanted the cannon. So knowing that your opponent has 9 civil actions and is lacking military technology, like, he knew I was going to take cannon, which, spoiler alert, I totally would have. So it was, I think, the correct call for him, even though it was kind of expensive. But then the fact that he was spending 3 actions to take the cannon here does kind of make me wonder, like, why spend 3 actions to take Catherine? Now, if you're like, wait a minute, he's got 5 actions and he spent 6. It's because of Eleanor giving back 3 actions upon being replaced. So maybe, like, he had too many actions? If you just take Robespierre and play him, you actually waste the actions. You would have had to do something else in the meantime. But just taking him and upgrading a mine, that would have been enough. So, yeah, still, I think you could take him and not waste Eleanor's actions. But this is the road he chose. So we pass the turn, and we're back over to me. Begging your pardon here. Okay, sorry about that. Let's continue on with my turn. I don't play the Cold War because I'm not at all confident I'll be one of the strongest players. I grab Chuckles McDarwin because I already have my government, and this gives me 2 points per turn, plus, of course, saves me some actions, which, as we all know, I desperately need. I replace Isabella. I could have kept her around and maybe snuck an extra rock out of her, but, I am making 7 rocks thanks to this mighty Suez Canal. So I decide to just play Chucky now, get an extra culture. I take the strategy for only 1 action, and of course I'm going to research it, so the 3 strength is very big here. It means I don't lose a yellow token from Rove Catherine's activation next turn, and now I have a butt ton of actions left over. What to do? Well, I could have researched Opera and actually built one, but I decided instead to build another lab. My thinking is that gives me 1 culture versus this giving me 3. I don't need the happy face yet, and instead I get 3 science instead of 2 culture, and I figured at this point it was still worth it to get the extra science. There is a space flight in the game, so it would be good to have a lot of science to build that up with. And there are some dubious wonders here. The nations, the Empire State Building, even maybe depending on how food goes, the Red Cross, they may all be kind of tough. It's not like one of those games where you have like space flight and fast food chains and, internet that kind of like everybody, or at least somebody, can really easily profit from. So with there not being that many good wonders, I thought being well positioned for spaceflight would be good. And plus, of course, we do have Gates and we do have Einstein for labs. So those would be each a good replacement for Charles Darwin. So the lab makes sense, at least it felt like it at the time. Now I still have 5 actions left, and what the heck do you do with all those actions? Now I don't have enough to make an opera and build one, but I can upgrade a rifle. So I'm getting up some strength. I'm even the strongest in case maybe I can steal some sort of strength-based event that's in here. I grab Revolutionary Idea, Urban Growth, and Patriotism, just taking a bunch of yellow cards, and passing the turn. All right, we get a classic army here, so if I could get the cavalry, that would be good. Parsley plays an event. It's economic progress, so we all make a bunch of stuff. Parsley, of course, makes the most total, food and rocks. He researches the rifles, grabs the justice system, because he could use another civil action, so that's a pretty nice grab for him with the scientific cooperation. He grabs the second copy of the horses, which of course he's going to do that, but I was very sad because it means that now there were no more Age 2 military techs around, so in order to get the classic army, I was going to need to get the tanks, and I was at the mercy of where they were located in the Age 3 deck. He plays the frugality, builds a rifle, so now he, with the upgrade, is actually the strongest player by a margin, and then he passes the turn. It does mean Parsley's Nostradamus will die, but I think that's okay. He could have spent 3 actions to take Nobel, but if he waits for Nobel to drop to 1 action, he still ends up saving an action, even factoring in the fact that he doesn't get the action back for replacing the leader. Alright, so Nostradamus dies, we're in H3, let's let Rove take his first turn, and then we'll take a look at the H3 situation. He researches those cannons that he paid 3 actions for, makes one, raises population twice, makes another one, and then all is revealed. The double switcheroo. You think when someone plays an H2 tactic, that's what they're going to use forever? Nope. He's not doing hussars. He's doing the mobile artillery. So now he's got a ton of strength, which is, well, pretty terrifying. And then he grabs a breakthrough and an architecture to round things out. I was very unhappy to see this and felt extremely threatened. Wars are now definitely in the air, especially because you can research constitutional monarchy for extra military actions. So I take the Statue of Liberty. I use Engineering Genius to build a stage, and then I finish it. This now gives me an extra 2 culture per turn and 3 yellow tokens, which I need because I was really slow getting my food going. In the sense, I haven't gotten it going at all. That took up most of my turn. And so now what do we do with our time? Well, obviously there is this journalism here, but I actually decide not to take it, even though it's so good with Charles Darwin. What I decide to do instead is play Patriotism and upgrade my final rifle just to try to, discourage any kind of aggressions or war. Right now, I actually cannot defend an aggression, but I have so many cards, I'm just banking that Rove will just assume that one of them is an H2 defense card, then of course I am safe. I raise population, build another rifle, and I play reserves. All right, so I actually get another copy of the fighting band here, and with 4 rifles, I am temporarily safe. All right, so Parsley's up. I get actually a very significant card here. So this is an extremely lucky draw because it's the only card of its type in the deck, just like Classic Army is the only one of its type in the deck. And that is, I admit, an extremely good piece of fortune for me, because now it means that with all these rifles, I either need tanks or rockets, either one, and I can get up a better tactic than Fighting Band. All right, so we have the trade agreement going here. Parsley gets an extra rock, and Random gets an extra food, which I was very, very, very sad about. Notice I did not take selective breeding that turn because I figured I didn't need it at the moment, and at this point I could just wait for the mechanized agriculture, which of course is a risk in case mechanized agriculture are the last 2 cards in the deck, but it's what I decided to do. Playing it a little bit frisky here. Oh yeah, we didn't take a look at the H3 overview. So just like in the first 4-player game, which I came in 3rd, I am the most in culture generation, but lowest in culture. I have some issues. Rocks are fine. I'm the best at science, but my food is pretty bad, and I am going to start running out of workers. Thankfully, the developed territory from the Suez Canal and the Roman roads and the Statue of Liberty have together given me 6 yellow tokens, so it's kind of keeping me going, even though my mines are still bronze. So my hope was that, okay, my military kind of sucks, but if I can patch up my food with a mechanized agriculture and patch up my military with rockets or tanks, I may be able to catch up. It's just kind of a matter of my opponents, how much culture can they start to generate? So I was looking at everybody's turn with extreme angst to see, okay, what kind of culture generation is my opponent going to get going? All right, so Parsley researches the cannon, raises population twice, makes a cannon twice. Now he's tied with Rove Random off of the flat strength of his units and the fact that the Great Wall is giving him 4 strength and the Transcontinental Railroad is giving him 9. So, 5, for a total of 9. So he's getting 9 flat strength, tied, so that if Rove Random uses Catherine's ability, Parsley does not lose a yellow token. He then grabs Nobel for even 2 more strength, so now he's in the strength lead in case there's a strength-based event in here. And with his final 2 actions, grabs a breakthrough because he needs it. He does need more science. Nobel is just perfect for him here because he really needed the science. One of the things that I was really enjoying about this game, or that made me feel somewhat hopeful I could actually maybe win, is the fact that my opponent's science was low. So it'd be difficult for them to, get the technologies they needed to actually generate a bunch of culture. But with 2 extra science, increasing his science production by 50%, I was a little bit disturbed by what Mr. Parsley might be capable of. So Rove is up, and Rove does decide to use Catherine's ability, so I lose a yellow token. He then breakthroughs a constitutional monarchy for just about all his science. And what next? Well, he raises population, makes another cannon, going up to 31. So now I'm really freaking scared here. He grabs the pro sports to fix his happy faces because he does need a solution for that. Grabs sufficient upgrade for his final coal mine. And then with his last 2 actions takes computers, which is a little bit, whatever, but he didn't have a whole lot else to do. Could have considered taking multimedia because unlike computers, multimedia makes points. But computers does work great with Einstein and with gates, which are in the game. Multimedia also works great with Einstein, to be fair. But computers works well with both of them, and we don't know who's going to come out yet. So I am fine with him taking this for the extra flexibility. So now I'm very far behind on culture, and war over anything, including a war over culture, is a very real threat. So I make a move I'm not proud of, but I felt kind of desperate. First of all, I play an event just to get some points, and Independence Declaration is out, so I lose my developed territory from the Suez Canal, which also means I lose a rock production. It is a disaster train wreck on wheels. Now, the good news is that it's actually kind of okay, because I am just losing 2 yellow tokens. I do still have 4 extra yellow tokens from Roman roads and Statue of Liberty, so that's why it's not a completely horrible situation. And to be fair, I get ridiculously lucky, and mechanized agriculture is right here. So what I do is I blow up a farm, and I build a bread and circus to fix my happy face issues. Now I research mechanized agriculture, and I have just enough rocks to upgrade one so that my solo mechanized agriculture is still kind of keeping me afloat. And then I take fundamentalism. The point of this is to protect my shadow army. I just want to discourage my opponents from doing any kind of wars against me, even though I lose a civil action compared to a republic, and I'm not that thrilled about the idea of researching this. I just want it there so that my opponents are like, he can research this and get 6 extra strength, maybe I shouldn't do that. And then I make a move I don't know that is the correct move. I take Marie Curie and I actually play her. There is some value being lost here. With Marie, I get 2 strength, 1 science, and 2 culture. With Chuckles, I was getting 3 culture. So I am losing a culture, and I'm also losing the ability to take techs for cheaper, which I actually used in this turn twice. The mechanized agriculture and the fundamentalism each only cost 1 action from the 2 action area. So I saved 2 actions this turn off of that, and who knows what kind of value I might be losing in the future. So I maybe did not do a great job, because with Marie Curie, I am missing the opportunity to get Gates with my 3 labs, Einstein with my 3 labs, or Pierre with my 2 bread and circuses. So it is definitely an opportunity cost type of situation, grabbing this sort of middling-ish leader who's just giving me 2 strength of science and 2 culture. I could have maybe gotten more if I had waited for a leader that better fit my civilization. And there were tanks here. So with Chuckles McDarwin, I could have taken the tanks, and I could have potentially, just built a tank to be safe and still had this for the Shadow Army. So I am not at all confident that this turn was played correctly. But I take the reserves. Now I've got a big Shadow Army. I'm hoping there's no wars. I hold my breath. And Parsley's up, plays an event. No wars, thank goodness. And we get a freedom of movement, which actually ends up being very significant for a few of us here. So what Parsley does is he switches an iron mine into a rifle for 4 extra... Sorry. What are these guys? 4 extra strength. 3 plus 1 from the Great Wall is 4 extra strength. Then he takes the oil. With the scientific cooperation, he has just enough to research it and build upgrade a mine to an oil mine, which with the Transcontinental Railroad gives him a huge boost in rock production. So he's fine with missing the 2 rocks per turn and instead having that be a rifle. He grabs Revolutionary Idea because that makes sense with the scientific cooperation and fairly low science. And in fact, he grabs the other Revolutionary Idea, so I was definitely not pleased by that development. The only silver lining here is after he takes the movies, he still needs time to research the movies and actually make the movies and actually start getting culture from the movies. And I am starting to catch up a little bit. I'm still behind, but I am catching up. And if, some kind of pressure happens and he doesn't feel safe making all the movies, then I may be able to overtake him. All right, so I hold my breath to see if Rove is going to do an aggression or war or what. He just plays an event, thank God. It's a territory. I actually did go for it because I was up next and could rebuild, but Parsley wins it off the back of navigation. Just a single rifle and a single defense card will do, so I was very, very sad to see that, of course. Now, what's Rove going to do? Finally upgrade his final coal mine, grab gates, grab tanks, and the efficient upgrade for the computers and reserves. So just a kind of setting up turn here. He was one science short of getting computers up and running this time, but next time he can do gates, computers, upgrades, start getting piles of rocks. My only saving grace here is I thought, okay, he's not upping his culture. I am quite a ways behind here. I'm 19 culture behind. More, actually, after he gets these 3 at 22 behind. But I am getting 5 more per turn. If I can push it a little bit, if I can crank it, then maybe I can actually catch up. It was a very, very tense game at this point. Okay, so I'm up. I play an event. It's the inhabited territory. I go for it, but I'm dead last. Rove actually does beat it over the back of Parsley's navigation. He pays an army for it. And that's actually fine with me because, yes, it's great that he gets, those yellow tokens. That's good for him with irrigation. But it's also good for me because the main thing I'm worried about here is losing because I get warred upon. Now, I make a very important decision with the rifleman, with the freedom of movement. I turn a rifle into a mechanized agriculture, and I do think I make the correct play here because I end up needing this food quite a bit. So, what I'm doing here is I'm going to spend most of my actions taking spaceflight. I have a butt ton of science, and I am going to get a pretty big spaceflight, and I'm hoping that that's going to push me over the edge and help me win this game. What do I do with my remaining 3 actions? Well, I researched the fundamentalism. I know I said I wasn't planning to, and indeed, when I took it, I remember this. I was not planning to actually research it, but this time I decided, you know what, screw it, let's just put it down. I do lose a civil action, but the strength, and you might say, well, okay, you lose a civil action, and you lose 2 science per turn after having just put spaceflight under construction. I know, I'm a genius, the likes of which most mortal minds can't comprehend. But I thought it would just be nice to be safe from any shenanigans, and it is taking me quite a while to get a tactic going. Of course, if I had kept a rifle, I would have had 4 extra strength, but I figured I just needed the food, and that was too good of an opportunity not to take. I take the civil service and research it, which is a little bit greedy because it's only giving me 1 more action. But I thought, there's not much else to do here. Might as well get back the action I spent on fundamentalism. And then I take engineering genius to help me finish the space flight and pass the turn. All right, so Parsley's up. I was curious if he would take one of these leaders and try to get the Nobel Prizes going. We get the popularization of science that I think I put in. I get a little bit of an edge on my opponents on that one. He gets the computers as well, researches them, upgrades them, grabs the military theory for next time, upgrades the other computer, and then raises population. I was really happy about this turn. He could have researched movies and just built like a movie, but he decided to work on his science first, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but I was happy to see it because I would rather him get science than get culture, and the game is kind of racing to a close here. So Rove is up, researches the computers, builds a knight to get back his army that he spent from the colony acquisition. It's time for Gates to take the helm. He grabs Empire State Building, which he actually does a really impressive job with this time, and he finishes upgrading his labs. For his last action, he raises population 1 more time. So you can see that as far as the Empire State Building goes, thanks to Parsley switching an iron mine to a rifle, with Gates, Rove actually is ahead on rocks. He's also ahead on strength. So if he can steal another category, like maybe science, then he can actually get 3 Empire State Building bonuses, which would be 24 points. 16 is like, kind of underwhelming, but 24, now that's, now we're cranking. We're cranking. I don't know if we're janking, but we're definitely cranking. All right, so passes the turn here. I'm up. I play an event. We get the international agreement, so Rove gets to lose his political action to take something, which I'm actually completely fine with, because if he actually takes that, he can't take much. He's got a 7-card hand limit, and he's already got 5 cards. And he's already got a wonder, so he really just can't do anything that great. And if he doesn't take it, then nothing happens. So as far as events go, when I'm dead last here on strength, I am happy with anything that doesn't, directly screw me over. Okay, so what the hell are we doing with this turn? Well, here's where losing those yellow tokens from developed territory does hurt, because if I had 2 yellow tokens in the bank here, I could take rockets, research them, make 2 workers, make 2 rockets, and finally get out of this strength hole that I'm in. As it is, it's a little bit uncomfortable. I can do something similar. I take the rockets, research them, make a worker, make a rocket, but where's my other worker going to come from for the rocket? I really don't want to lose an iron mine, and there's nothing else I can take. Now, I could have done some weird line, like I could have raised population twice and done the reserves, and then made another rocket. But I decided to take the military buildup and the reserves and the patriotism instead. And I don't know if that was the correct play. If we look at what happens later on, especially what cards get discarded, I think I probably should have just made another rocket. But the way I thought about it is, I have safety. I'm not in danger of any wars. And let's just get yellow cards to help build the Wonder and maybe build some other stuff as well. I still think it's a mistake, though, because if I had made the rocket and switched to positional army, it would have put a lot of pressure on my opponents, and it would have let me keep riding this high that I'm on for some reason. For whatever random reason, my opponents are just not emphasizing culture generation in H3. Do you see what I did there? For whatever random reason, whatever random. My God, who needs Netflix comedy specials when you can watch the YouTube videos of this guy? Anyway, they are not focusing on culture. So if I go for strength, it makes it harder for them to focus on culture. And I probably should have just gone and done that instead of taking 3 yellow cards that I don't even know if I'm going to have time to play, because I already have a lot of yellow cards I'm planning to play with here. So I sadly wave to Pierre as he passes by, and it's up to Parsley. Parsley gets the movies down, researches the cavalry, makes a cavalry to finally get this Napoleonic army that he got a while ago. He raises population, and he makes a movie. He then takes Pierre, which is going to be worth at least 8 points for him. He plays the revolutionary idea, and that's his turn. So he got the Nobel Prize, and he built a movie. But it could be worse. Could be worse. He's going to go up to 60 culture. He's now officially behind me. So even with the Nobel Prizes, I may be able to hang on to this one. All right, so Rove is up. Rove uses the international agreement to take reserves and air forces. That's only 3 actions because his hand gets full. He then researches the pro sports and the architecture to trigger the Nobel Prize. He builds a pro sport for strength, I would imagine, because he wants to get ahead of Parsley. And now it is time to build the Empire State Building. So he gets a bunch of rocks. He makes a lab. And with that lab, he did need it because the lab gives him 5. And without it, he would have been at 10. Okay, so he builds a lab to beat up Parsley on science. He built the pro sport to just beat Parsley on strength. And with 3 categories in his last action, he builds the Empire State Building for 24 points. So a very strong turn here. Got a lot of stuff going. Got the Nobel Prize, got the Empire State. However, I am going to get the space flight still, which is going to catch me up on this. And I'm making 8 more culture than him per turn. He is going to get the Gates bonus, though. So he's actually like a little bit ahead of me still, even after factoring all that in. But, there's hope. And if anyone's going to win this game, I'd rather it be Rove than Parsley. So ideally, I could get first, Rove second, Parsley third. But if Rove gets first and I get second and Parsley gets third, that's still fine with me. I thought my chances at this point were actually pretty good. All right, so this is my final turn starting in H3, and I really had to consider declaring war. This is where, if last time I had made the rockets and the positional army, then this time, with the air forces, I could have really considered declaring war on Parsley. But as it is, with the Napoleonic army here all ready to go and get another one with the military theory, it just seemed like it was a bit of a stretch. So I decided not to do it. Instead, I played some random event from H2, and we got the impact of culture, which I can't remember if I put in or not, but that's huge because it gives me 14 points against Rove, which is what I need right now. And at this point, I play the military buildup, I grab the satellites and research them, and I research opera, so this gives me the Nobel Prize as well. I raise population twice, and I make an opera for 3 extra points, which will be, 6 points total. And then I make the rocket finally. So now I am the strength leader. So my thinking of this, there's a lot of other ways I could have done this turn, but my thinking was I don't actually need these air forces. What I need is the culture from the Nobel Prize, the positional army, and that's good enough. I'll be safe. And now I've got a whole butt ton of stuff left over here, and then I can just make the space flight next turn. So I draw some irrelevant cards. Parsley's up. It is H4. Parsley grabs democracy, and with that revolutionary idea, he can research it for extra culture. He also declares the Olympic Games, of course, and puts down the Red Cross. It's not going to be a huge deal, because he's going to build 3 stages, and and his opponents are going to build, what's her face, 1 each. So that is just a gain of 12 plus the number of colonies. Now you might say, wait a minute, Papa Boris, hold on. He has 16 food. Why didn't he just take the red cross and build the whole thing? Well, a thing to keep in mind is that at the beginning of his turn, he had monarchy, which with Justice System and the Forbidden City is 7 actions. So he could have taken this for 4 actions, and then he would have had only 3 actions left. Because the architecture, he never researched it. Had he found a way to research architecture, and maybe he could have somehow if he had done something different. I don't know. I didn't pay that close attention because what am I doing? Analyzing these games? That's not my job. But if he had somehow gotten architecture down, he actually could have taken and completely built the International Red Cross this turn, and I think then he would have had a chance of winning the game. But as it is, Rove and I each get to take 6 points away from him, which is a 12-point swing against each of us, because we get 6 instead of him getting 6. And I think that could end up being very significant this game. In any case, he raises population and builds another movie to get some extra culture, and then he passes the turn. All right, so Rove is up, plays an event. We get these. So this is Rove reprising his role. He's like the United Nations arbitrator, always choosing who gets the stuff. And you know what? To be fair, he does make Parsley pay me 3 rocks to make up for the other game. Although obviously it doesn't hurt Parsley nearly as much as it hurt me. But in this case, maybe he was just trying to minimize my benefits and he figured that I was not going to be able to use these rocks very effectively. Though I don't think I could have used anything that effectively, so it probably just doesn't straight up matter. Anyway, he takes the movies, researches them, makes a movie, makes a worker, makes another movie. So it's like right as the game is ending, my opponents are getting their culture going. But I was hoping it was too little too late. He has to spend his last action now building a stage of the Red Cross, and then he passes the turn. Now it's over to me. I can't do a whole lot else to improve my space flight, and I can't play the Impact of Science because I'm losing it, and I can't do aggressions because of the Olympic Games. So I offer a completely irrelevant military alliance to Rove, hoping in some way, somehow that helps him, get second over Parsley or first over Parsley, whatever it's going to be. And now what to do? Well, we can research one technology, the Pro Sports, and build the space flight. It's a big one. It's 29 points. Now, the Pro Sports is actually not an irrelevant technology. I do have corruption issues, or revolt issues, so I play reserves for rocks, I raise a population, and I straight up build a Pro Sport. Now, if I didn't have those extra rocks from the negotiations, then I would have had to play the reserves to get the rocks to do that, or settle for upgrading one. But as it is, I have an extra action left over, which is just to build which is actually a very significant action. It's to build the stage of the Red Cross. So if I had had to play reserves to build the Pro Sports, then I wouldn't have had the action for the Red Cross. So something would have had to give. And I guess what it would most likely have been is this action here where I raise my population. I would have had to upgrade a bread and circus instead of building a Pro Sport. And that is not insignificant because, oopsie, hold on. If we think about what I have, I've got, let's say, instead of building a Pro Sport, I upgrade one. That means I have 1 less bread and circus. That would mean I have 2 less happy faces, which is relevant because I only have 4, 5, 6, 7 happy faces minus the Kremlin is 6. So this is making the difference between me being at 8 happy faces or being at 6 in case Impact of Happiness is out there. That is 4 culture. So maybe Rove could have had Parsley give me science because the science would have been completely irrelevant. Or food. I had enough food to raise population and build a stage. The thing I was missing was the action. So the fact that he gave me 3 rocks, that did give me an extra action, which was, somewhat significant this game. All right, so Parsley's up, plays an event. It's the Cold War, which is irrelevant for me, but for Rove, who knows, it's probably also irrelevant. Then he gets the military theory, raises population, finishes the Red Cross, of course. There's only 3 colonies in play, so it's not a super big one. He only gets 18 minus 6, 12. He only gets 15 points relative to each opponent with this one, so I'd call this a pretty small wonder. He then builds another theater, disbands a horse. This is ultimate style points, because he could have disbanded a rifle. Or a cannon, right? Oh, no, I see what he's doing. Okay, never mind. He disbands a horse, turns it into another movie, and then he swaps to my positional army. Right. There we go. So he's still fine on strength. And he gets, pretty solid 20 points at the end of the turn here. All right, now Rove is up. He gets the tanks down, disbands a cannon, builds a theater, disbands a horse, builds a theater, researches airplanes, which are irrelevant, but gives them the Nobel Prize, and he blows up a temple and turns it into an arena. So he's really ready for impact of competition and impact of architecture. Now, if we look at what's happening here, going into the final scoring, it's actually kind of close. I'm only ahead of Parsley by 11, and Parsley is ahead of Rove, thanks to the Red Cross and all these movies and the Olympic Games, by 8. So I had two main hopes here. One is win the game, which is by no means assured at this point. And the other main hope was that whatever happens, Rove beats Parsley and catches up these 8 points that he's missing. So let's see what happens. First up, we got the Harmony. That's 20 points for me and 16 for each opponent. Oh, right, you know what? I actually forgot to do this in one of the games, but Rove's got gates with 3 labs. So just to be clear, Rove is actually currently 1 point ahead of Parsley. So I really wanted Rove to keep that lead. Okay, so impact of Harmony. I get 4 points out of my opponents, which helps me win. Whatever Parsley does not get ahead of me or ahead of Rove, good. Good event. Thank you, event. We got impact of industry. That's bad, because now Parsley gets ahead of both of us. Although, weirdly, it's kind of a good thing that Rove has this 9, so Parsley's only a little bit getting ahead of Rove. Okay, could have been worse, but not a good event. Next up, we have the Progress. I'm great at that one. I get 24 points. Parsley gets 20. But Rove was not very progressive, so he falls 10 points behind. This basically nullifies Gates' bonus. I am very scared now, because now Rove is 19 points behind Parsley. We have the impact of architecture, and I was very excited about this. Rove gets really big. He gets 9 points ahead of Parsley, so he makes up for that other bad event. So now he's only 12 points behind, but with Gates, he's only 3 points behind, so there's one more event left. I am just freaking out in my chair, and it is the Happiness, which I'm very happy about because I get max points and Rove gets max points, but Parsley did get up to 14 with it. He had 7 happy faces, which means that after Gates' bonus, Rove finishes 1 culture behind Parsley. 1. Now, I want you to remember this 1 point of culture. First of all, I'm just thrilled to bits that I won this game. After a pretty awful start with the 4-player games, I was just so pleased I could, tussle with the muscle and hang in there against 2 really high-rated players, really high-rated by my standards, of course, and win. So I was really pleased about this game, but do not forget about this 1 point of difference, because if Rove had 1 more point or Parsley had 1 less, and they would have tied, then Parsley would have gotten 1 point instead of 2, and that 1 point is going to be a significant point, as we shall see. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and or subscribe, and I'll be back soon-ish with some more of the games from this stage. Take care, everybody.